Is digital nomadism all that it's cracked up to be? And how can you best handle critics when you escape to your life of freedom? We discuss all that and more in today's interview with Eric Malzone. He's a mentor, he's a podcaster, he's a fitness entrepreneur on today's episode of the Freedom Club Podcast.
Welcome to the Freedom Club Podcast, where we discover the fight for freedom, fulfillment, passion, and purpose. Your host is Kurt Mercadante, Gallup certified strengths coach, an agency founder who is dedicated to coaching individuals seeking to level up their life and their businesses. The Freedom Club is about unlocking your talents, turning them into strengths, and crushing your objectives. You can learn more at kurtmercadante.com. Welcome to the Freedom Club.
And how the hell are you doing out there in podcasting land? I am Kurt Mercadante, your host of the Freedom Club Podcast, and today is Wednesday, which means it's time for the interview segment, and I have a great interview for you today with someone who oozes freedom out of his pores. His name is Eric Malzone. He's a mentor. He's the host of 2 podcasts. You know, he picked up with his wife after a year of tragic loss and decided to live the life of a digital nomad, decided to live a life of freedom and fulfillment. He's the founder of the Fitness Accelerator. We talk about all of that in today's episode. But first, I want to put a plug in. This episode, once again, is brought to you by my very own 2019 Growth Mastermind. Listen, I used to think I knew it all. I'm on my 3rd profitable business right now. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's to keep learning. It's that I don't know it all. Hell, I became a business owner because of my feeling of self-reliance. But I had to learn that when I'm stuck in a rut, I shouldn't be embarrassed. I shouldn't feel bad about asking for help. I've had coaches. I have a coach right now, Fraser Cameron. I know he's listening to this episode. He's got a coach. Successful people know when to ask for help. They're not afraid to ask for help. And that's what my Growth Mastermind is all about. It's about business owners coming together to not only grow their companies, but to grow the freedom and fulfillment they have in their lives, to align their work with their family and their self, to gain true entrepreneurial freedom. So listen, if you want to keep grinding away, if you want your relationships to suffer while you're grinding away at your business, while you're working those long hours, then don't you dare apply for my mastermind. But if you're ready for true entrepreneurial freedom, you go to kurtmercadante.com right now. Fill out an application. Join my Growth Mastermind. It's limited to 15 people. It's 3 months, starts in January. I'd love to have you in it. So please go and apply today. So now that I've gotten the self-promotional plug out of the way, I'm happy, so happy to bring you today's interview with Eric Malzone. And this guy, I will tell you, the word freedom comes to mind when I just hear his name now after this interview, and I think you'll feel the same. I hope you enjoy today's interview with Eric. So Eric Malzone, or as we said back in the homeland, Malzone, right? Thanks, Eric, for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, man. I hope I can add some value to the people watching and listening today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know you and I chatted. We're both in, you're the 3rd straight guest from 10X Factory.
Nice.
So we're both in 10X Factory. It's kind of an online mastermind. Mm-hmm. A few weeks ago, I had on Ali Mirza, sales expert. And then 2 weeks ago, had on Doug Holt, who I know you do some work with.
Yeah.
And I asked you earlier today, how should I describe you? You said, that's tough. You're a digital nomad, mentor, podcast host. You have 2 podcasts, and you're founder of the Fitness Accelerator. So we're going to get into all of that. But first, again, thank you for joining. And the first question I ask anyone on this podcast is, what does the word freedom mean to you?
Nice. Just starting off with a softball.
Yeah, right.
Straight to fast pitch.
You get the difficult part out of the way, and then it's all downhill.
Yeah. Well, I'm fresh. I think freedom is, when you look at my hierarchy of values, right? Freedom is number 1. So I think about freedom a lot. I work within my life and my business to achieve that freedom. And so I'm actually, I think my personal definition of freedom is very similar to my definition of success, which is living a life that doesn't necessitate vacation, right? It's basically that simple. It's like, well, I'm never exhausted. I'm always doing the things I want to do. My joy is part of my life. Right now I'm sitting, staring out the window as I talk to you at a beautiful home in Whitefish, Montana, overlooking the lake and 10 minutes from the ski mountain. And, it's part of the benefits of being nomadic, and actually having a wife who agrees to be nomadic, even better. Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's, without too much thought, I think that's my best definition.
Cool. Yeah. And you are a digital nomad. And I know a lot of folks think that's their dream. Mm-hmm. They don't necessarily know what it means or what it entails. And they picture sitting on the beach, sipping margaritas all day with their laptop. Right. I know it's probably, well, you're in Whitefish, Montana, so it's definitely not exactly like that.
Yeah. No.
But I know that you also, when we first kind of chatted back and forth, mentioned some of the challenges that come from it. So I guess, first of all, how did you arrive at the digital nomadism that you're living today? Yeah.
Well, I like a lot of people who are listening, and you as well, Kurt, I've been a business owner / entrepreneur for, about a decade. So I opened a facility in Santa Barbara, California, back in 08, 09. Built it up over time, about 8 or 9 years, and I sold it last year. And, when the conversation started taking place, my wife and I, Santa Barbara is amazing. If people don't know Santa Barbara, California, it is beautiful. For many people, it is the end goal. Like, you just get to Santa Barbara, you buy a piece of property, and that you call it a day, right? You just live. For my wife and I, we rarely went to the beach. 72 and sunny is great for some people, but for me, it was like, that's the whole year in Santa Barbara. It's like 72 and sunny all the time. And people are like, what are you complaining about? I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, for me particularly, we liked the mountains. We always vacationed out to the mountains. We're always, 3-day weekend, we're off to the mountains somewhere. And, when I finally came home at one point, I told my wife, you know what, I think I want to sell the gym. Let's go move to that mountain town that we've been talking about. And we actually had a map of the Western United States and Canada with all these little needles on it. Cities that we wanted to go visit. And I'm like, well, let's just, I'll start moving forward on the sale of the gym. It was a very sellable asset. And I'm like, let's go find our mountain town. And my wife simply said, well, why don't we go find a bunch of mountain towns? We can work from anywhere. And that was it. It was just that. We're like, okay. So we started looking and, figuring out places that we want to live. And a lot of it has been extremely spontaneous. We're here for 6 months, which is the longest that we'll spend most places in a year. But we don't know where we're going to be this summer. We don't know where we're going to be this fall, and that's part of the excitement of it. So it happened in a simple conversation. It wasn't necessarily really planned out. We just like the idea of it, like most people. And then once we kind of hit the road, we're like, okay, there's some challenges here. This is not what Instagram always says it is,
Yeah. What are some of the challenges? I mean, you mentioned kind of not being able to call up friends and say, come on over and watch the game or things like, or head to the bar or something like that. Right.
Yeah. That's a big part of it. I mean, I came from, the facility that I owned was a CrossFit facility, CrossFit Focus, which is a very, very community-based gym. I think that's, if there's one characteristic of CrossFit that we can all learn from a business standpoint, is like, we build communities really strong, and, having one of the larger facilities in the Central Coast of California, I just knew a lot of people. I went to Santa Barbara, we get out to dinner. I would see people I know. Everywhere we went, I'd see someone I know. And then we got on the road and I didn't know anybody, which at first I was like, this is amazing. I can go anywhere and complete, anonymity. And, but then it starts to wear on you a little bit. I do believe not having that, we don't have kids. So it's just me and my wife and we get along really well. But at times you want some other conversations, right? And you want to talk to other people. And I talk to a ton of people online, just like we're doing right now via Zoom. But that does, it's a down point for sure. But now that this is my second time in Whitefish, Montana. So I kind of know people now, building relationships as we go. And I'm getting better at forcing myself into social situations and doing things like that. But that's a challenge, especially family. We actually have the freedom now where we go and we'll spend time with our family throughout the year in different areas. And there's parts of my family that I got to spend time with and I've never gotten to spend time with, like my Uncle Paul in Seattle. I never spent time with them, but now that I'm on the road, we spent 3-4 days with them. And it was fantastic. But yeah, it's a challenge. You have to be willing to be independent from that.
Sure.
Yeah.
What total side note, is that where you met Doug back in Santa Barbara? Did you guys know each other from Santa Barbara? Okay.
Yeah. That's exactly where we knew each other from. So Doug was also a facility owner. For everybody, there's so many gyms in Santa Barbara, but he had a high-end private training studio. I had a large community-based, group membership model. But when he had sold his facility, and ironically, he hit the road too. He has a converted van. He drove up to Alaska. And when I first contacted him, that's when he was on the road. So we competed. And when he sold his facility, he started training at mine, which I was very flattered because, he knows the industry and he decided to train. So that's where we met. And when I found out he was in digital marketing, of course, poor guy. I didn't leave him alone. I'm like, what's this Facebook ads thing? Like in the middle of a workout. Yeah. Tell me about SEO. Yeah. So that's how we met.
Cool. And for those listening, Doug Holt, again, he was a guest 2 weeks ago on this podcast. And so what is it? If you grow up in a warm area like Santa Barbara, you go to cold places for digital nomadism. And if you grow up in like Chicago, you go to the beach, because that's where I'm from originally. And we came to Charleston, and now it's like, it's in the 40s today. And I want to go to Key West now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think so. Some of my my colleagues and mentors along the way a lot of them are from Canada, and they all moved to like Arizona, right? And when I'm like, hey, I'm heading up your way, they're like, you're freaking crazy, man. What are you doing?
Yeah.
But yeah, I grew up in Northern California, actually, not Santa Barbara. That's just where I opened my facility. So I was used to a little bit of a colder climate, but having skiing really close. Skiing's my big driver for the winter. We just love to ski. I'm 10 minutes from a mountain. Last year I got 65 days in. I'm not bragging, but kind of bragging because it was, I was like,
might as well
going from 2 to 5, per year at a really expensive way to do it. Now going to, I can go off in the afternoon and do it. So I think it just depends, as they say, Kurt, I don't know what the exact phrase is or who had said it, but wisdom is really figuring out what you like in life.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And then you're happy. Right. So we pursue what we like, and we're not that into the beach. We like it, love scuba diving and stuff like that. But
I guess you grew up, we come down, we're in Charleston. We lived here about 5 years, and, some people here are like, I don't like the beach. I'm like, what are you, crazy? You grow up by it. It's like, we lived in Washington, DC for 4 years. And during the first year, we hit all the monuments and all that like 10 times. Then we never went to it again. And it's like, I've been there, done that. So, things become your frame of references. If they're new, it's exciting. But if, you want to change. When you talk about that, finding what you like, finding what you love to do, often when we make that change and make that jump, I interviewed a guy, Tim Allison, last week, actually, and he made a move he had a corporate career, suffered depression, I think some alcoholism. He quit his job and moved to a small fishing village in Nova Scotia to start his own company. And he talked about, he's got a book and a podcast called Screw the Naysayers. And talking about, when he did that, people actually accused him of being a bad dad. You're not being financially responsible. And he talks about kids who, or adults who were put on a path of conformity at age 15 and said, do this, and then they get to 40 and they're like, I've hated my life. So he talks about the naysayers, the people who say, what are you doing? You're supposed to do this. You're supposed to major in finance. Well, why? You're supposed to do this. Did you experience any naysayers when you decided to just pick up and be a nomad?
A ton. Yeah, a ton. I mean, by all measure, if you look at where I was at, I was 39. I had a successful gym business. I was living in Santa Barbara. My wife and I owned a couple properties in the area. Like, by all means, people are like, why are you going to mess with that? And I think ultimately we get in these grooves, right? I mean, what I'm talking, getting these grooves, and you just keep pushing. And then every once in a while, like 2016 was a very traumatic year for us. While we can get into it, but we don't really need to. Just understand it was traumatic. And you know, is a series of loss, and it really made you question, like, what are we doing? Like, life is very, very fragile, you know, like it can go at any time. And you start thinking like, well, all those things that you want to do, you know, we always like, well, let's go see this park. We want to travel here. We never been to Banff, right? Like, let's go someday, you know, everything goes to someday. Well, someday. And then, you know, for a lot of people, someday doesn't come. And then, yeah. So I think a lot of people, I heard people say things like, well, you know, and this is what they said to my face. I couldn't imagine what they would say, you know, when I wasn't around.
Behind your back, right?
Yeah. You know, they're like, well, I hope you find what you're looking for.
Right.
And I'm like, what? Like, whatever. Right. No, we're out of here. And, you know, many people are extremely supportive. I have a lot of very, very good friends in Santa Barbara, California, who are like, man, you guys, it's so cool what you guys are doing. But there was a lot. Yeah. There's a lot of people who didn't understand, you know, and that's fine. They don't have to. You know, I always prefer to go. I think that's just a more fun.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. So what, now you mentioned some traumatic things, and I don't want to push and
Sure.
Whatever you want to do. But Tim Allison, actually, I mentioned, I was on his podcast a few months ago, and we talked about, you know, there were some things that smacked me in the face and forced me to kind of change. And he said that a prior guest said, yeah, often, unfortunately, it takes what he called an infrastructure rattling event to get you to pivot and change. And it's unfortunate because some people would rather wait for that, quite honestly, than do it themselves. So did you have that kind of experience that forced your hand a little bit?
Yeah. And nothing forced it. It just, it woke me up, and it woke my wife up, you know, and, you know, I'll talk about, everyone in their life is going to have that thing, right? That thing that happens where, it changes who you are. It was so challenging. You didn't think you were going to come out of it. And, you know, if you don't know what your thing is yet, it hasn't happened. Cause you don't get through this life unscathed. You just don't. And, you know, for us, it was, you know, in 2016, my wife and I got married late. I was 37, 38. She's a year younger than me. And we weren't sure if we were going to start a family. And then we're like, well, let's go for it. And we got pregnant. And we're really excited. And we're like, okay, so everything started going really well. And then, you know, as it progressed and more tests started coming out, things weren't looking good. And ultimately, you know, we had to, we lost the pregnancy late, like 20 weeks. And that was extremely traumatizing, especially for my wife, me too, but me having to take care of her, you know, it was just really rough. And then after that, about 2 months later, her father passed away of a heart attack at 61. And then we had another friend pass away who was a close friend of mine at the age of 40. You know, it was probably most likely, we think, due to drug issues, and then health issues that came from that. And then at the end of it, our dog died. Right. So it was like, and, you know, I tell people all the time, like, my chemistry just shifted, right? Like, my physiology, like, the things I enjoyed weren't the same anymore. Things that used to stress me out. And then, you know, it was just, I like that term, infrastructure rattling.
Yeah. That's
exactly.
And, you know, obviously I'm sorry that for all the losses, that you have. But in many ways, you know, those experiences are what make us for the rest of our lives. Right. And certainly woke you up, and now you're making some changes, and to hopefully strengthen not only yourself, but your relationship and your world around you. Right. Yeah, for sure. Well, you take and you learn, and, you know, there's things like stuff like that happens when you have that infrastructure rattling. I'm going to use that all the time now. You know, it never goes, like, whatever that event is, it never goes away. It's background noise, and you just learn to accept it for what it is. And it's just a scar that kind of heals, but never really does. And what you do is you adjust to living to it, you know, living with it, and you find the power in it. Right. You know, oftentimes there's a lot of power that you find in those points. Maybe it's your opportunity to help someone else who's going through it, or just what you thought was rough before, your whole definition of, like, what a tough time is completely shifted, and gratitude comes from that too, ultimately. Right. So I think, there's a lot of ways to find the silver lining. Although when you're talking to somebody who's going through their thing, you can't
There's nothing you can say.
Yeah. No. Yeah, no, absolutely. And sometimes people have to figure it out for themselves.
Yeah.
Because you can't obviously force it on them.
Yeah.
One thing that's so you had a brick and mortar gym.
Yeah.
There's a lot of folks out there who have a brick and mortar whatever. In their mind, it's a traditional business. Certainly a gym, right? It's physical. You're there.
Very.
And you've left, and what you do is now virtual. And there's a lot of people out there who can't ever, and I'm talking about things like marketing. Like I've talked to people, marketing clients and potential clients who can't even fathom any type of business like marketing or service oriented and taking it virtual and not having an office. Yeah. You took something that is like super traditionally brick and mortar, and you've taken it, you have your 2 podcasts, but also you have your, the Fitness Accelerator. I know you have a number of other things going on as well.
Yeah.
I guess, how did you come up with the idea? And, for people listening, I guess, is it creativity? Is it, you had to do it, you had to make it up, so you did? What would you say to someone who is stuck in that notion of, well, it's brick and mortar. What am I going to do? I have to be in one place. I got to attend meetings. I have to,
Yeah. Yeah. It's not that different. I check in every day. If anything, I work more now than I did. I definitely work more now than I did, especially in the last like 3-4 years of the gym, because, I had that thing was cruising. It was like Friday afternoon, you're going to find me on the golf course. Wednesday and Friday afternoon, you're going to find me on the golf course. Right. And I would show up and just coach the classes I want. Ultimately, when we look at building our own business, it's just, the first thing you have to start with, what does your ideal business look like? And for some people, it is brick and mortar. They want they want that feeling of like walking into the shop, having a place to go every day. And I don't think it's not for everybody, right? Did I say that right? I think it could be for some people. And, I think there's a lot to it. I just personally didn't want to walk into a gym 6 days a week anymore. Nor did I want the overhead. And I think that's a big thing, is like, if you go into online services or products or whatever you're doing, I'm dabbling in all of them now. And it hasn't been easy. It's been almost a year and a half since we left Santa Barbara. I've learned some hard business lessons, right? Who to trust, who not to trust, what products and services prevail, what doesn't, where you want to find your blue ocean, right?
Sure.
In the online space. And, one thing I did really commit to was the podcasting, because I believe that, I think, let's put it this way. Think about skating to where the puck is going, right?
Yeah.
Not where it is right now. And that'll serve you. I think you probably know, like, people who are the most successful, when they're interviewed, they almost always look at things in 10-year increments. Like, okay, how's my life going to be different in 10 years if I stay on this path?
Yeah.
Right? It's that ability to see the vision. And you and I know podcasting is only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, right? That audio, the ability to listen to something while you're, on a bike ride or cooking or whatever, that's just more powerful. And as we get these home devices where you can just put on a podcast, about fitness,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
It's just gonna get more powerful. So I stuck to that, and I didn't know where that was going to go, but I've interviewed 400 people this year in the fitness industry. And so I put out a lot of content, and what that's done, I've got a really good understanding of what's going on within the fitness industry. And where I can find my blue ocean. That's where Doug and I came up with the Fitness Accelerators. There's nothing quite like it, right? No one is connecting and networking at the level they need to be within the industry. And, for full transparency, my wife has a great job. She does well. She's a VP or a director of operations. So upon the money that I got when I sold the business, which was enough runway for a while, especially living in Montana versus California, her salary goes a long way. And that's another part about, if you're going to go off and build an online business, you have the affordability to find somewhere that the cost of living is much, much less. It's about, we were talking about this last night, we're about at least half, if not more or less than what we were in Santa Barbara. at least.
Gosh. Well, I assume it would be like that just about anywhere in the U.S. outside of California, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Outside
Yeah.
of like California, Illinois, and New York, I think.
Yeah. Washington, man, Washington, that area.
It's getting pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I know. And what did a couple of years ago, they started the U-Haul index, and you could measure where people were moving to or leaving based on the price of a U-Haul. And it was like the price of a U-Haul from like Austin, Texas to San Francisco was like peanuts because no one was going. Yeah. But the price of a U-Haul from San Francisco to Austin was like through the roof because there was this exodus, largely because of cost of living, taxes, and other things. What you mentioned some hard business lessons that you've learned. Mm-hmm. What are off the top of your head? What are a few?
Yeah, I think I'm quick to jump into partnerships and opportunities without really doing the due diligence behind it. I'm a very trusting person, I'll put it that way. And sure. When I initially, when Doug and I had partnered, and Doug's been great, and I'm not talking about Doug. He's awesome. But we looked at partnering with certain organizations for offering solutions as far as digital marketing, because, I did all right marketing my gym, and I thought I could help more gym owners, and I just partnered with the wrong person. And, it was just a hard lesson. It made us take a big step back and be like, what are we doing? Do we want to even go in this direction? And then it took a lot of ducking and diving and figuring out, where the value is. And it was do your diligence, be very cautious with who you go into business with, do it in baby steps, not overcommitting up front is what I would say.
Yeah.
But really get to know people.
It's interesting because in this day and age of, and what you've said is true, even if you're meeting face to face, but nowadays we're relying on a LinkedIn profile. Yeah. We're relying on video testimonials. And someone talked about, coaches and coaching, and how do you tell? I'm looking at the testimonials. I said, well, here's the thing about testimonials. No one's going to put forth their bad testimonials, so everyone's going to have good testimonials to show. You have to look at their background. You have to look at, what have they done? There's a lot of coaches who now fitness coaching is probably a little bit different, but it's similar to you. Like if you were like 400 pounds and like unhealthy and you're like, I'm a fitness coach. There's a lot of coaches out there who have never tried to build anything. They've never actually had to like try and fail. They just kind of failed. They've never invested in a coach. And I know that because some of them go from coach to coach to coach to coach. And there's a network of coaches who are like, did Joe just call you? Yeah. And it never jumps in. And they talk about how miserable they are. And then next thing you know, they turn around and they're getting their coaching certification. It's like they're going to have good testimonials. But look at what they've done. Look at, those types of things. But nowadays, things are online, and, everyone puts their best foot forward online. So it's more of a challenge, I think.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think we are going more and more into a relationship-based economy because everybody has a great profile, right? All you see is the best of everybody online. Even when people post like, hey, I'm having a bad day, this is what a bad day looks like on Facebook, it's still contrived.
Right. Yeah.
It's still, and that's when we talk about, like with the Fitness Accelerator, the group that we're building, and we're very cautious with who we let into the group. These are all people who we know we can vouch for each other. Other people, I think referrals are everything now, right? If someone refers you to somebody and you trust them, there's a vouch for factor. Totally. And I think that's when I talk about relationship-based economy. And everyone now, dude, I don't care if you're in fitness, if you're in any kind of online space, everyone's like, well, I can get to 6 figures in 90 days, right? If I just follow this funnel. Yeah. Right? Like it blows my mind. But if you really want to bulletproof your business, it's going to take a little bit of time, and you're going to have to plant a lot of seeds as far as relationships go, and nurture them. And that forms bulletproof businesses, right? And people forget that. Like networking is almost too easy now, right? You just go to LinkedIn, be like, hey, message somebody because it says podcast host, right?
Right.
On there, and you just did a search. You're like, oh, this is, he's in my network. It's not really networking, right?
Right.
Now,
Right.
maybe if you look at that person's profile and they're like, oh, that person's a skier, you message them, hey, I see you're a skier and podcast, so we should talk sometime, right? And then you schedule a time to talk. Maybe you talk about skiing, you talk about your families, you talk about whatever it is. Now you have something that you can nurture over time. And I think that's the biggest thing, is relationship-based economies will prevail. Because we have all the tools to start relationships, but to nurture them, that's something different.
Yeah, no, it's well, we met in an online group, and I just put, hey, someone vouched for you or referred you, and then we and I chatted. I actually just hired some folks out of 10X, and I probably wouldn't have done it if Eric Carlson, the head of 10X, I had vetted them through them. So that worked out, because like you, I've learned some lessons along the way as well, because everyone's got a funnel. Everyone's got a funnal for everything now, right? And it's like, okay, have you sold high ticket coaching? Well, no, but we sold a widget. Not the same thing,
right?
Right. What the Fitness Accelerator? So I'm real interested in this. How does that work?
Yeah, it's cool, and it's it's young. It's about 90 to 120 days. So I was telling over 300 to 400 podcast interviews with people all over the globe in the fitness industry. I started to see similarities, and I was biased because this was my hunch, is that, when you look at the fitness industry, it's very disconnected and poorly networked. So, you have these silos of information and conversation that happen. Like I was in the CrossFit silo, right? The CrossFit gym owners, CrossFitters, they all talk the same language. They all talked about the same marketing tactics and business principles and things like that. But then you get this whole other group of people, even strong first folks, I'm people may not know what I'm talking about, but there's silos, and I want to break.
Is that Pavel? Is that Pavel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's he was the original. Yeah. And it's, now Fabio is the CEO over there. But that's what I saw. And when I started talking to people who I considered medium to high level operators within the community, they're like, yeah, you're right. This is it. Like, no one's doing this. And I was also naturally connecting people. So, if I saw someone like, Natalie Dow out of Singapore, needs to meet Luke, the CEO of F45, I connected them, or Andy Petronic, a Whole Life Challenge. I connected them, and now they're working on things together. Right. Yeah. So I was able to be that connector piece. And really, the Fitness Accelerator is a Slack community, very similar to 10X. It just makes my job easier, to connect people. It's a swipe of a key, it's a little, how it works in 10X, right? It's just, you connect someone via Messenger, boom, it takes off, and then they're vouched for. And that's what we're building, is something very unique. And it's just a lot of fun, and it's a membership-based thing. It's simple, really. I mean, how simple Slack is.
Yeah.
But, it's the people in the seats that make the difference. So that's what we're working on. And it's mostly for people who are listening. It's for online fitness entrepreneurs and B2B.
Got it. So you're helping them build their businesses. You're not actually doing. Now, do you still do any training?
Do I train people?
Yeah.
I have 2 online clients that I train. Yeah,
cool.
That's it. Yeah. Because I like them. I've been working with them for 5+ years, and that's it.
Do you, with that, do you just meet up after their workouts, or are you literally like online while they're working out?
Oh, no, I just do program design.
Yeah.
So, that's always been my thing, is I've been really, I really geek out on program design, especially the more complex it gets, the more I like it. So, that's what I did for a very long time with my gyms. I did all of that, and I work with CrossFit athletes, which are some of the most complex programs you can design. So that's mostly what it is. And I meet with people, once a month over Skype or Zoom, see how they're doing. And that's it. They send me what they're doing with their nutrition every once in a while. But it's simple.
Yeah. So what's next for you? Or you don't know, you're going to play it by ear for 6 months, and, you might end up settling down somewhere. You might just keep doing what you're doing and traveling around for years.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, we don't know. We're here for 6 months. Like I said, as of today is December 11th. We just got here a few days ago. So we have a 6-month lease here. And then after that, we don't know where we're going to go for the summer. The summer is the most difficult part because it's the high season. It's actually our least favorite season most of the time.
Okay.
So, we have to find a place. We kind of know where we like to be in the fall. But yeah, we don't know. As far as business goes, there's a lot of opportunities that are popping up through Fitness Accelerator. Seeing where people need help, where my talents can add value, and my skill sets, and those are looking really awesome in 2019 too. So it's cool, and it hasn't been easy. The first year of figuring this all out online and doing the nomad lifestyle, it hasn't been easy, but it's really starting to, the payday is becoming clear.
Awesome.